Right, our first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. I've had an apology from Councillor Mark Foster, the Mayor. I think everybody else is present. Declarations of interest, item number 2. Disclosable pecuniary interests in any item on the agenda. There are none, I take it as no response. Any non-pecuniary interests? Item 3, I have no announcements. Item 4 is the public open session where we adjourn for 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions or to address the council. We have one member of the public physically present. Do we have any online? Helen? Councillor Fage, you'd like to say something?
Thank you, Chairman. So I wanted to speak on the fees item. Is it 10D, related to the annual fees and charges this year, specifically about the Orchard Centre, which is in my ward, Biggleswade East. So I did a little bit of research, got in touch with some of the regular hirers and put it out there on social media to see what some of the users of the Orchard Centre thought of it, just out of curiosity. And colleagues would be pleased to hear that the response was generally very positive, particularly citing some changes which came over the last year or so related to the operating model, and some of the changes which have been implemented since then. So I think that's something that we can definitely take as a positive to build on from regular hirers. What I wanted to flag up in the fees and charges was something that I spoke about or have spoken about in previous years, particularly when I was a town councillor, including when I was mayor, about the level of some of the hall hiring fees that are required. And I think something that I said last year was that the hall is probably under capacity. I haven't seen any figures related to it, but the feedback from regular users is that there is still spare capacity in the main hall. Seems to be maybe half used, perhaps a little bit more than that. And the spare room, the meeting room, rather less. And they felt that that was a little bit sad and were worried that perhaps some of the fee levels are putting people off. So I know we're on par with the Weatherly Centre, but it is quite a bit bigger, has a lot more parking, a bar, etc. So something that I raised when I was a town councillor last year was perhaps we could have a really aggressive sort of approach to going out and seeking new business and really trying to get the occupancy up. And in my opinion, as a ward councillor, I think the council should consider very carefully whether a perhaps slightly more generous fee structure, just even if it's for 1 year on a trial basis, to see if we really can push the use up in the community, whether that would be something we could support. And if I just look at it from a revenue point of view, and I'm using very blunt figures here, if we were to halve the fee, for example, but triple the number of users, that would be revenue positive for the council. So I'm not saying do anything that radical, but it could be revenue generating if you go about it in the right way. And I hope you've got the information you need in front of you to come to that decision this evening. But personally, from my point of view, I personally would like to see something a little bit lower, but also a bit more aggressive to go and get some more users, because it's such a fantastic facility. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fate. I'm sure the committee will take that into account when considering matters like later on the agenda. No other members of the public, Helen?
Just one.
They don't want to speak. Item 5 is the invited speaker. There is none. Item 6, members' questions, please. Are there any members' questions? No, good. Right. Minutes and recommendations of meeting 7A. This is to approve the minutes of the last meeting of this committee on Tuesday the 16th of September. For accuracy only at the moment, the first page, which is page 6, and I'll refer to the numbers in the overall pack when doing this. Page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10. Is it your wish that I sign these as a true and correct record of the meeting? Thank you. Right, item 8A is matters arising. Again, I'll take it page by page. Page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, Page 10. Thank you. There's no matters arising. Moving on, item 9A, financial regulations update reference charities. You've got the paper before you that's been prepared by the finance manager, Mr. Youngs. Would you wish to say anything on it, or would you just members' comments?
It's really as the report.
Peter.
There's only one amendment that I would suggest, which is on page 28, para 15.1, where it refers to the item in regard to risk. It should be referring to item 16, not 17. Yep.
Thank you. I've got an observation I may make a little bit later on the report. Members, your comments, please. Councillor Russell.
Well, we obviously need to add this back into the financial regulations, so I would move the recommendation.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
I'll just make one observation. Historically, it used to be in here some years ago. It was at that stage financial regulation 16, and I think it would stand on its own as financial regulation 16, which then Mr. Tarrant's comments about moving the comment about regulation 15 in recommending 15 could remain at 17 because 16 would fit into it nicely. Would members be happy to take that on board? Because I think it does make sense to have the charitable side clearly separated from the asset side.
Happy to include that in the recommendations.
Any further comment? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Right, next item is the Mayor's expenses. And we've got a written report from the Head of Finance again. Mr. Youngs, have you got any comments, please?
This is following on from the 10th of October meeting, whereby we're supposed to be reporting back of the position of the mayoral activities, which is what this report attempts to do.
Thank you. Councillor North.
There's an item here in the at the bottom of the second page, Mayor's Board engraving, £195. But I assume that means making the board behind us here, putting Councillor Foster's name on it. But I think that's an expense of running the council. I don't think that should come out of charitable funds.
If I may comment, I have had this discussion previously with Mr. Youngs. I personally think that should either be under the civic functions or mayor's expenses. Certainly it shouldn't be mixed with the charitable expenses. And my personal view is that it should actually be under the civic function side, as it's not a mayor's expenses. I wonder if that could possibly be incorporated if members were agreeable to that.
Yes. Yeah.
Any other comments, please? Councillor Russell.
We're asked to consider the layout of the report, and I would just say that at the top of page 39, where we've got the three charitable activities, could we not just say somewhere what the mayor is supporting this year, rather than repeat it in every one of those paragraphs, because it's rather laboured.
Thank you. I think that observation could be taken on board, and may also suggest that possibly town's mayor's expenses and charitable activities should be separated as different items on the report rather than included under the one heading.
Yes.
Councillor North, do you wish to say something for that further, or if you've forgotten to press the button?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Are members happy with that proposal in that case? Any further comment before I put it to the vote? All those in favour? That again is carried unanimously. Thank you.
I'm quite happy for the head of governance too. It's probably more his area.
Mr. Hussaini, do you wish to say anything on this report about the? Is he online?
Hello there, good evening everyone. I didn't actually catch part of that conversation, only because the sound's intermittent, I think, coming from the chamber to me. Which bit would you like me to comment on regarding the report on the mayor's expenses?
No, we've dealt with that, thank you.
Yeah.
We're now on to the fleet and mower replacement update report, please.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly. So a few things, if I may. So essentially the report in front of you and in the pack draws from a series of conversations, most recently the 31st of October growth meeting, which was held with some members. And essentially the list contained there has not changed from that discussion. It's the report also has 6 decision points in there and suggests 3 replacement vehicles plus a mower, which is a separate item essentially, but included in the same report for completeness. The mower itself being a specialist mower, push mower replacement for the existing condor machine, which has been broken now for some time, is unrepairable and cannot be procured in terms of a leasing arrangement. We've ascertained that via the public realm reaching out on trying on multiple occasions because the item is too specialist. So that will need to be drawn from, the suggestion is to be drawn from capital reserves for that item there of £8,000. Going back, I think the list though of vehicle replacements essentially is a way of looking of replacing the vehicles we think most need to be replaced. It's quite pragmatic on the whole, I think, in terms of having to retain some vehicles as well, which are still serviceable and functionable. And it has also an eye to the future in terms of the suggested electric vehicle, which we're talking about bringing in as well. I'll pause there for now, though, and take any questions.
Just first question, you've mentioned the mower and only have been able to obtain the one quote because of the specialist nature of that. I think I'm correct in saying that we have to suspend financial regulations if we push that through. So have I interpreted that correctly, please?
Yes, thanks.
Thank
you, Chair. So on decision 3, I've got questions regarding that. So that's where the Isuzu is to be replaced by an electric vehicle. There's reference to lower running costs. Do we know what the difference in costs will be running the Isuzu as compared to the electric vehicle? And also, I'm not sure, do we have a charger installed in the depot yet? If not, we will need to consider that, presumably.
Who's going to take that? Mr. Youngs, I think perhaps that's on the finance side, largely with the exception of the electrics.
So I believe that is part of the overall package, and that a charger would be installed as part of taking the vehicle on. It would be installed at the new depot. Unfortunately, I don't know the running costs.
Mr.
Hussaini, can you help on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we haven't had a breakdown. We've had we've had a quote which talks about general running costs, and we kind of match those against the standard vehicle which runs off fuel, and it's marginally cheaper. But that's kind of, you know, it's there's no great science in terms of which we've applied to that, other than to assume it's marginally cheaper than the current vehicle in terms of operating costs. Clearly, of course, it's a lease vehicle as well with a full maintenance and servicing package anyway, so that's covered within the monthly charge.
Councillor Russell.
2 or 3 things. The costs for a charger have been mentioned, and I can't see that that's included in the deal with the purchase of or leasing of the vehicle. We've got here that we're going to replace one vehicle with a single cab and one vehicle with a double cab. Well, when we discussed this before, it was generally agreed by councillors that both cabs should be double, because the increase in costs was very little, and it gives us a lot more flexibility. And very often it's required that 2 public realm people are going two jobs for health and safety reasons. So I can't understand why we've still got a single cab replacement. This is the second item down in the table. So I think that should be the same as the one above it, I think is right. The second thing I'd like to raise is that it's already been agreed and we've already purchased the new gang mower, but that has already added over £18,000 to our revenue budget for next year, which is something that we need to take into account here. And the third thing I'd like to say is that I don't think we should be making any final decisions on where we go with this, because they're major items, until we can see the full figures, because we still haven't seen the full figures for the budget and therefore what the effect on the precept might be. So I'd be prepared to make a provisional decision, but I would not vote for a definite decision at this point.
Any further comments? Councillor North, you're chairman of PLOS, which is the Committee, Public Lands and Open Spaces Committee, which is largely responsible for these. Have you got any observations on
No, I
these?
haven't. This has not been presented to PLOS, this issue of vehicles. I don't, as far as I'm aware.
So you haven't actually been consulted on this part of the budget?
It's been raised somewhere else, hasn't it? Oh, it was a preliminary,
Yes, yeah.
preliminary precept meeting, wasn't it, some weeks ago? Yeah. Yeah, no, so I have no real comment. I mean, if these vehicles, obviously, I think there is, just as a general point, we do need to make sure we keep the vehicles in working order, and if they are at the end of their life, we should replace them. I mean, that seems to me sensible, and we had this very unfortunate experience of not doing that with the mower. We reached a point where the mower was unserviceable because the previous year we had failed to agree to replace it, and then it stopped working. And now finally we've got a new one, but we should have done that a year ago. So I think we should, if these things need replacing, then we should get on and replace them. One point I would make though is that when and if we do take, I agree with Councillor Russell in terms of let's agree it provisionally, subject to final decisions on the overall precept. But one point I would make is I think we should, as long as it's not too expensive, have the town council logo on these machines, so that on these vehicles, so when people see them out and about, they say, oh, that's the town council working there and doing things, rather than say, oh, I wonder who those people are looking at that flower bed. That's all.
No, that I'm sure that we can fit that within the general budget somehow or other. Councillor Allbone.
The single versus double cab issue. Can we know exactly what that means? Because I think you can probably get two members of staff in a single cab version of the vehicle.
Mr. Hussaini, can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, certainly, thanks. So, yes, the suggestion for the Ford single cab, you could fit three abreast on the row that it is, and the double cab would be for 5. So you could fit 5 people in there with the same load capacity, at the back on the SUV vehicle. Just going back again, if I may, I think it was Councillor Russell's remarks. It's true about the Maxus vehicle on option decision point 3 does come with a charger which they can install as well at the depot. It being apparently relatively simple, straightforward connection they can do, and the cost does include the charger they would put in. And yeah, and I'll pause there. I think that answers the question, most questions.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So I also recollect that in the informal meeting, we were minded to support 2 dual cabs just because the cost differential was quite small, and having a fleet which is nearer identical seems to give you more resilience in the event of a failure, that type of thing. So I think we should do that. In relation to decision 3, this is the one I'm still not really sure about, which is the Isuzu. So nothing in the report explains the serviceability of the current vehicle. I'm not opposed in principle to having an electric vehicle in the fleet. I'd like to understand where the charge is going to go. Is it going to be inside or outside? Is it going to be accessible to anyone in the community or on the estate? Or is it only going to be accessible for works vehicles within the building? if it's going to be within the building, is there any increased risk because of the potential fire hazard, for example, with charging an electric vehicle inside? Is there an impact on our insurance? Do we need to consider the electricity we're on? And I'd really like to see the figures worked out. You know, maybe we need solar panels to actually subsidise the cost. Maybe we need to charge it overnight, so we need a tariff that supports cheap night rate electricity. So I think for me, there's a bit more detail I'd like on that one before we commit to what seems to be quite a significant increase in capital expenditure, moving from 3,000 to over £5,000 per year.
I think I'm correct in saying it's actually revenue expenditure on that part of it. But I take the point. Mr. Hussain, have you got any observations on that particular point? Because in some respects, are we just changing it to reduce the running costs when we could be saving the 2,000 by keeping the existing one? Is that still fit for purpose, or what are the maintenance costs that are making this recommendation so important this year?
Sure. So thanks. So a couple of points. I'll just hark back to the double cab versus single cab. It's absolutely correct to say that was pointed out at the growth meeting. I mentioned that to public realm manager, and he still came back saying he still would rather have one rather than the other, than double. But he's happy to take double as well if that's the way that members are minded. I think it was probably a cost implication, even though there's minimal difference between the two, or marginal difference between the two. On the serviceability of the fleet, in terms of the green Isuzu, which is what we're talking about here, my understanding, having spoken with the team recently, is that of all of the vehicles that we're asking to replace, that's the one that would have the longest possible lifespan left. So talking about the older, the 6/8 plate Kubota and the Ford, for example, those are relatively. We're very keen that they're replaced, if we put it that way. The Isuzu, I myself, I put it into here as a complete list. But it technically speaking, if you're asking for my best guess on that, it could go on for another year. I'm going out on a limb here.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
I'm a little bit confused by the recommendation. Having heard all the conversations that the leasing budgets for fleet vehicles will go up by 11,825, and it says mower leasing of 8,000. But in the table, the mower is in the capital subtotal. So is that a leasing cost that's 8,000, or is that the capital cost that's 8,000?
I think I'm correct. If I understand it correctly, we're not able to lease because of the value, so it has to be a lump sum payment, which will be.
So the recommendation should say.
It should be. It should actually. It would be clearer, I think, if it said capital. I think that's the intention. So it's intended to be a capital expenditure out of the capital reserve rather than revenue.
So in simple mathematics for the next financial year, we're actually looking at £11,000 plus £8,000 minus £7,000 of reduction in the maintenance costs. So we're talking about £13,000 additional money next year is what we're agreeing to in principle.
I'll pass that to Mr. Youngs.
Yes, correct. I mean, obviously the reduction in the vehicle maintenance is it's a guess.
Yeah.
You're right to say that, which is why in the one of the paragraphs it say it negates the growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just so I understand what we're agreeing to in principle and the total amount of spend we're making. Okay, thank you.
I have the sheet that we had at the previous meeting on this, and the difference between the single cab and the double cab, according to this, additional leasing for next year. Single cab is 4,668 and double cab is 4,908. Well, what's that, about £230 difference? It seems a no-brainer to me. And the other question I would just ask, we've just been told that if we have that electric vehicle, it will be, the charging whatever will be installed. The other issue that we do have sometimes, or people do have, is actually the electricity from the street, if you see what I mean, and that has to be upgraded sometimes, so that could still be another an additional cost, unless the electricity in the depot is such that it will support charging a vehicle.
Thank you for that comment, because it comes to mind that the depot is on a private estate. It is therefore something that if there was an additional need for additional electricity, it would not be coming from the mains. We would probably be having to pay for it to be installed. And I don't know whether that's being covered. But I think that's something I'm getting the feeling that there's been a feel that we should make a provisional decision today, which will be finalised when it comes to the precept meeting in view of the decisions being suggested. Also, in view of the comments that members have made, I think it would be prudent for us to take each decision one by one, rather than trying to do it as a block, because there's clearly some division or alteration from the original proposal, from what members are saying. Does that seem a sensible approach, please? Are there any other comments, or perhaps we can come to someone could make a proposal, but I'd suggest if we could have proposals on each particular one, and bearing in mind that the mower being a capital expense, and because of the uniqueness of the equipment, that we need to suspend financial regulations for that. So if nobody's got any further comments, perhaps I could have a proposal, please. To North.
Well, I propose that we replace the Ford SUV by a Ford double cab Transit, if you want to take them one at a time.
Right, so that's
item one on the table.
That's decision one. So
okay,
Councillor North has proposed that. Is that seconded?
Can I just clarify that's an indicative proposal? We're not making a final decision.
No, it's an indicative proposal to go to the precept.
And would I be correct in thinking that members would like all these to be indicative proposals, so that we don't at that point made clear before we start, rather than having to remind each other all the time? So that's been proposed on an indicative basis. Is that seconded? Seconded by Councillor Knight. Any further comment? All those in favour? That's carried. Decision number 2, a proposal, please. Councillor Russell.
On the same basis to for the Kubota to be replaced with a new Ford Transit double cab.
Seconded.
Any further comments, please? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please signify. That's carried unanimously. Decision 3 relating to the Isuzu, or however you pronounce it. A proposal, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Knight.
I propose this is deferred for now, pending answers to some of the questions we've asked this evening.
Councillor Russell.
I'd second that proposal to defer. And I think this is the one that Mr. Hosseini was referring to as being not so urgent as the others. And
yes.
I think we need that confirmation as well. I mean, just to reiterate what was said earlier, I think we would all like the public realm team to have a completely new set of vehicles that really help them to do their job. But we do have to see this within the context of the whole budget for the council, and what this does to the council tax that we're setting.
So the proposal is that this be deferred, and that's been seconded. All those in favour, please signify. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Decision 4, the Isuzu long base. That's been recommended not to change. Have a proposal. Councillor North.
Yes, well, this, I don't know that we need to agree this, but it's to keep. I propose that, as recommended, we keep this in place and don't remove it.
So that's keep as retained. I think, is that seconded, please? Yes. That's seconded. Any further comment? All those in favour, please signify. Thank you. Items decision 5, the Kubota, which is a recommendation to keep. Is that? Could I have a proposal, please, Councillor Russell?
Yes, to keep it as proposed here.
Is that seconded, please? Yes, yes, that's Councillor Knight. All those in favour, please signify. And finally, decision 6 is the Condor Specialist Mower. First of all, could the proposal include a suspension of financial regulations when, whatever the proposal is? Councillor North.
Yes, I propose we suspend financial regulations to allow this to go ahead as proposed, on the basis that we only had one quote Is that right? Yes.
Yes,
But
thank
we
you.
are willing to accept it and go ahead with it as it is necessary equipment.
Thank you. Is that seconded, please? That's seconded. All those in favour, please signify. Right, thank you. That's that's that side all dealt with. Right. The next item is the annual fees, 9A. There's a written report there. Mr. Youngs, do you wish to make any comments on the paper, please, before I put it to members?
The annual fees were reviewed in great depth a few weeks ago, middle of November, and taken the information from that meeting and put it into the new annual fees. The green items are the items that the context was understood and seemed to be supported at that stage. The items in yellow were items that further additional information was requested. And finally, the items in red, particularly the Orchard Centre, because there's a plan coming later on that wasn't really discussed.
Thank you. Members' comments, please. Councillor Russell.
I've been through all of these figures and I don't know whether you want to take them individually as items, but I would say, starting with the market stalls and the charity stall, that we should agree those figures in green. And also there's an issue about the deposit on the charity stall. So I think we need to, I need to understand what other people think, but I would still say that there needs to be a deposit on the charity stall. So I would say that we accept all of those figures on page 45.
Members' comments, Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that. So my understanding is that is, as you say, a deposit, and it's effectively the same amount that you would pay for an ordinary stall. So it would go up in line. It's good news that only 2 charities have booked and then not turned up. And I think maybe the deposit is part of the reason. That's the situation. So I think we should keep that as well, if it ain't broken. So it's seconded.
Any further comment, please? Is Councillor North who lights on? Is he? Thank you. Any further comments? Because I think it makes sense to take each block as one rather than trying to take the whole. So that's been proposed and seconded. Any further comments? All those in favour, please signify. That's carried. Thank you. Same basis. The next one is the allotments charge, scale of allotment charges, which is for page 47. Any comments, please, members? Could I have a proposal then? Councillor Russell.
Same as before. I think we accept the 2 figures, 40 and 55 there.
Is that seconded, please?
Seconded.
That's seconded. Any further comment? All those in favour, please signify. That's carried. Thank you. The next item is the Drove Road and Stratton Way burial grounds. We've got quite a lot of figures there. Members' comments, please. Mr. Tarrant.
I just wanted to reiterate to members that our colleague Helen Calvert sent out some additional information that I hope you've been able to receive and read through. And obviously Helen is with us tonight if there's any additional context that you require. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Russell.
There's a lot of figures here, but we did spend time informally going through all of these. And I would like to propose that all of these figures in the green and yellow are accepted and put forward for the budget. And that includes the search fees on page 50.
Is that seconded, please? Councillor Barrett, any further comment, please? Councillor Elbone.
Yeah, the comment on the top of the page, non-residents includes anybody who has lived outside of Biggleswade for 3 years or more. At previous meetings, that was kind of discussed, and the feeling may have been that that should be perhaps reviewed, because some people might be outside, who are Biggleswade people, of if they've got elderly and have gone into care homes or whatever outside of the town, it would seem a little unfair to deny them this.
Thank you for that observation. Councillor Russell.
Councillor Alban's quite right, and we did talk about reviewing the policy here. So could I add to my proposal that the policy is reviewed by PLOS in the near future, please?
That was the seconder happy with that? Yes. Councillor Oban, does that cover your point with that being added? Mr. Tarrant.
Yeah, I mean, that was a discussion that took place earlier, and I think there's a commitment in the paper that actually that we come back in January with a revised policy document for your consideration.
If you're coming back in January, does that need to be another indicative decision, or are we happy to go with that figures?
I think that the figures are one thing, the policy is something different. So I'm proposing acceptance of the figures, and as long as at some point in the near future we revise the policy, I think Councillor Alban is okay with that.
Can I just clarify? So on the last page in this section, the bench or plaque charges, so these relate, I believe, not specifically to the cemeteries, but to our new memorial bench policy, I believe, which could be placed anywhere within the town. And I presume those charges are in line with the cost of procurement.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Any further comment, please, members? In that case, it's been proposed and seconded subject to the amendment that was put forward. All those in favour, please signify. There's none against. Thank you. That's unanimous. Next section is the Orchard Community Centre. Councillor Russell.
Partly in view of what Councillor Fay just said, but because we're going to be looking at how the Orchard Centre is going to be managed in the future, I think we should leave the fees as they are put in the 23-24 column for now and see whether we need to review things at some other point. I don't think we can agree or disagree any figures because we don't know what the policy is going to be for the Orchard Centre.
So you're proposing that the fees remain as things stand at the current year's rate for next year, subject to any changes that may occur
By council in the future.
By the council in the future. That's a proposal. Is that seconded, please? Councillor North has seconded that. Any further comment, please? Councillor Knight.
Can I just clarify that in passing that resolution, we won't be locking ourselves in for 6 months if we wish to put the rates up?
There are ways to, it takes, I think, 5 councillors to ask for it to be brought forward again, and it can be considered within the 6 months. I think that's right, yeah.
And I think it was also made subject to any review that might take place of the operation, so that I think that would cover the 6-month point. Thank you, Councillor Knight, for making the point. Any further comments or observations, please? All those in favour, please signify. That's again carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're hopefully getting towards the end of this particular part. Scale of charges for hiring of sports facilities. There's a couple of pages there, pages 53 and 54. Any comments, please, members, or proposal, preferably? Councillor Russell, thank you.
I'll dive in again. Again, we spent some time considering all of this. There are changes to the football pitches. There are changes to non-members for the bowls club. But I think that what's suggested here on pages 53 and 54 is the right way forward. So I'd like to recommend that we accept those figures.
Is that seconded, please? That's seconded by Councillor Knight. Any further comments, please? If there are no further comments, all those in favour, please signify. That again is unanimous. Thank you. The final point, effectively, is the scale of charges for parking permits. That's page 55. Members, a proposal, please. Councillor Knight.
For a change, I propose the new charges as set out.
Thank you. I'm sure Councillor Russell's very relieved at that. Councillor Russell seconded that. Any further comment, please? All those in favour, please signify. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Right, items for consideration. Item 10A, the finance review update. Mr. Youngs.
There just remains one item outstanding to do with the car parks. I don't know if the place shaping manager wants to update us. Okay. It's really as the report says.
Members, any comments, please? Is it your wish that we note the report? Is this pros? All those in favour, please signify. Thank you.
After a discussion with Councillor Strawn today, I felt it was important to mention that I would be trying to get a precept ready for by the end of December, so that it gives members a chance to have a good, thorough examination.
Thank you. So that's a changing from the original time proposal. Councillor Russell.
I think it would be only right for us to have an informal meeting before the F&GP meeting on the 16th of January, so earlier in January. I don't know whether there's a Tuesday evening that's available, but I think we need an informal meeting when we can see we've got all these variables, we've made provisional decisions, and we need something up on the screen here and to see what difference the different additional items make. Before we have a formal decision at F&GP, because the report says that we will be given 3 options at F&GP. Well, that's very limiting for councillors, and I don't think that's right. I think we need to be able to see what various things, how various things impact on the budget and make our decisions accordingly, because we've got a lot of good things that we want to do, but we need to see the overall impact, and by early January, we should know the new figures from Central Bedfordshire as to what to base the precept on. So we should be able to look very accurately at where we're going with the precept. So I'd like to ask that that's added as an additional item, please.
Mr. Youngs.
Yeah, in fact, the tax base has been received already. So we are in a position to be able to do that.
I think the second Tuesday is the 2nd of January. First Tuesday is the 2nd of January, which I'm going to be very tight, I think, in fairness to the staff, to actually have all the papers with. Well, if Mr. Youngs can do it, that may be a free Tuesday. The 9th is the 2nd Tuesday, which is the full council, and the 3rd is the F&GP. It might be something that we would need to look at a different night in the week to get it in. So I think would that be feasible, please?
Yeah, sure. But Thursday the 4th, potentially.
I think that we need that. Would need that time. In fairness to you, to rejig in view of if members' comments. So
yeah.
That would seem to me to be a sensible proposal. That will give time for everybody to actually have a full review of it, and for you to make any changes and work out any things that need to be dealt with in that time. Yes. Councillor Barrett.
Could I just ask also that during that informal meeting, which I fully support, we also get some view of efficiencies that are to be made next year as well. A lot of the items here talk about growth and change. I'd just like to see the wording around efficiencies, which perhaps might imply reduction.
Thank you. Note that comment, and that's a good point to make, I think. Mr. Tarrant.
We would normally do that as a matter of course, yeah.
So I think, am I correct in thinking that the meeting would propose that we have a pre-informal discussion with the budget figures on Thursday, the 4th of January, in the evening at 7 o'clock? Is that proposed by somebody, please? Councillor North, seconded. Any further comment? All those in favour, please signify. Thank you. Sorry, I'm missing the button. Any observations on the risk management update, please? Is it your wish that they be noted? All those in favour? Thank you. Item D is the quarterly bank reconciliations. Again, you've got detail there. I think in practical terms, from future reference, we could probably just do with the first 2 pages, such as the report, and then the fact they've been signed off, rather than going through all the detail. Any observations or comments, please, members? Note it. Any further comments? All those in favour? Thank you. Right, that's the main part. The next part is the second public open session, item 11. We have one member of the public physically present. Would you, Councillor Fage, would like to speak?
There you go. Yeah, thank you. Firstly, I think that's a really sound decision to just pause and make sure we get the decision over the Orchard Centre right. Something that I don't know what you're going to discuss and exempt, although I know the Orchard Centre is on the agenda. Something that I think I struggled with a little bit over my 6 years as a town council, and I think we'd only just taken the Orchard Centre on when I became a councillor, was the real vision for the centre. You know, who we want using it. Is it a 9 till 5 kind of thing, or are we going to go later and try to entice different groups to use it at different times, weekends, evenings, etc. So I know some of that sort of sits on paper at the moment. I think the next step is how we get some of that into the community. And I think, as I've stressed before, getting the price right is important, but it needs to fit into the whole strategic marketing picture, and also what we want the centre to be used for in the longer term. What's it going to be like in 2 years, 3 years, etc. Because I think the potential is definitely there, and we've taken some really good steps in the last year or so. So hopefully you'll build on that in the next few minutes.
Thank you for the constructive comments. That's welcome. Helen, are there any other members of the public online? Oh, right, thank you. Councillor Howe, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes. Just to say that it's really good news that the mower is being replaced. I spoke to the maintenance team sort of May time or April time, and so that's really good news. Just a little thought on the Isuzu. Bearing in mind it's obviously Biggleswade, maintenance transport, would not cover too many miles. Would it be prudent to replace it next year as opposed to now?
Thank you for that. I think the Isuzu, that was decision 3, wasn't it? Which we decided to keep, if I remember that decision correctly. So we're not disposing of it this year, we're keeping it.
Excellent. That's good news. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anything else, Councillor Howe?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Any further people online wishing to comment, Helen? Well, in that case, I call the formal open session of the council meeting to close. Could someone move that we go into exempt for the final item?
Move it.
That's moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you for those members of the public who attended. We'll now adjourn. I'd suggest we just